Hi everybody, and welcome back to another edition of LandO's Lock-ins. We are approaching the final week of stage 4, which means that we are just 1 week away from land, depending on how you like to say it. Of course, for me, it works either way. It is universal type of term for me. I am just excited that we're gonna be able to see players facing off against each other. It is going to be amazing. I say facing off against each other in the same location, no longer in the online atmosphere, which has treated us quite nicely, but at the same time, we all can agree that being on land is much better. So with that, first off, let's go ahead and recap exactly how we did at the Florida home series, which I thought we did pretty well. We go overall 9 for 10. Only prediction that we did fully miss, so we got 0 points on, was Paris having the upset versus LA Thieves. Had that one in a 3-0 for Thieves. Totally opposite. It was in fact the Legion who were just great on the day. They take down the Thieves roster, and there was a lot of talk about the Thieves that we'll have on today, that's for sure. And then I think that's probably the highest week that we've had so far throughout stage 4. We have 51 points at 23 at the Chicago home series, 28 at the Florida home series, and who knows, maybe here at the LA Thieves home series we can hit 30. Probably not, but you never know. Crazier things have happened before, including a bracket that was nearly perfect last major. So who knows? Like I said, it could be possible. And again, as you guys can see, our overall prediction since we have started LandO's Lock-ins is 40 for 46. I am hoping to keep up that win rate, because it is, it looks nice, but I know we talked about kind of getting into the major brackets. That's where things can start to get a little bit nutty. So with that, hope that you all enjoy, of course, this. If you're interested, and I know that I could obviously link timestamps, but it's kind of easy. Like if you're looking for a specific match, you can just kind of go in a row of which ones you want to watch. Of course, if you want to do this alongside me, I absolutely welcome it. If you hear a prediction, if you hear me kind of breaking down one of these matches, and you're like, well, I don't know if I agree with that, or maybe I think that maybe it could be this team who walks away with this series. Feel free, right? These are obviously your choices. This is just kind of my thought process as I come into this week and how I do my pick'ems, how I actually do kind of analyze each match in my head, look at different records, and kind of go from there. So with that in mind, like I said, appreciate everybody for tuning into this edition of LandO's Lock-ins. Excited for this week, and again, like I said, it is our final week until we do get to land, which is a very, very exciting time. I wish I could be there. I will be in Dallas, but I will not be on location, which I'm quite sad about. But it's all right. It's going to be fun regardless for the players. So starting things off, right? Get right into the action. Toronto Ultra versus the LA Gorillas. First thing for Ultra, right? They have looked great in their past 2 series. They walked away with the 3-0 versus Dallas. They walked away with the 3-0 versus the London Royal Ravens. On the other side for the Gorillas, 1-8 in their last 9. They've lost their last 4 series. They are 0-3 so far throughout stage 4. Not great for the Gorillas as of late. And I think, to be honest, just getting the series right out of the way, this series simply comes down to LAG. Can they put respawns together along with search and destroys? Will it be a search and destroy and a control? Could it be double hard points? Probably not. And I think when we talk about this series in particular, Toronto in the control, they will be in favor most likely, as depending on vetoes, we'll probably see a raid or a garrison. I know what 3-0, it was a 3-0 for the Gorillas in their last matchup on a garrison. I think it was versus Florida, if my mind serves me right. So again, you could argue like, hey, you know what? Maybe LAG could come out and surprise in the control, but I don't think that's going to happen here. I think that Ultra look good in the hard point. Again, Gorillas, that's probably where I see them striking either the opening hard point or the search and destroy. Obviously, everybody knows Gorillas for the search and destroy. I think they're also very good for whatever reason to just game 1 hard points. But I think the Ultra ultimately handle business. I think it's a 3-1, if not 3-0, but I'm going to go 3-0, investing heavily in the Ultra to not skip a beat here. So we'll go and lock that one in. 3-0 for Toronto. It could change. It very well could be 3-1, but I am going to go with a nice 3-0 for Toronto. I like the pace that they're on. I think they've been feeling really good, and I think they're going to be feeling very confident coming into this series versus LAG. Next matchup, Chicago versus Seattle. I mean, what, coming into this, right? OPTIC looking much better. They get the 3-0 win versus Minnesota. They have a 3-0 loss to Atlanta, and then a 3-1 win versus Paris. That's kind of how their stage 4 has gone up to this point. Now, we have yet to see OPTIC, I guess you could say, take down a top dog if we're talking about the stage 4 regular season, because again, I mean, you know, wherever you want to judge Minnesota at, it also was Minnesota's first match with Major Maniac and the team. Paris obviously not a top team. We talked about the standings, and of course they do have a loss to Atlanta. So again, and this is not going to be a top dog, I'm just kind of pointing that out as something to make reference of. And then for the Surge side, of course, not being that top dog, they are on a 10 loss streak. They have lost 10 series in a row, which ties the CDL record that we've seen the past 2 years, tying with the Minnesota Rocker whenever they, you know, went on they won like or got close to like being in the grand finals for a few events in a row. And then I forget what home series it was, but they just went down, and they went down for like a solid few months. They ended up losing 10 series in a row, and now the Surge have joined them in that conversation. So far, Control still is a problem for Seattle. I forget how many losses they have in a row. I guess it's 10 in a row. I guess it would be 10 controls in a row that they've lost. And then they're also 0-4 in Search and Destroy so far, which is not helping their case by any means. Both these teams have been up 3 times so far throughout this year, when Chicago were 9-1 in map count. So if you are looking for either the 3-0 or the 3-1, I would advise you to go with a 3-0 here, because that's what I'm going to do. I have Chicago winning this 3-0. You know, Seattle, they'll have to win something unexpected. I don't think we see them steal a hard point. That is probably their best chance. And I know it's hard, right? Because you can say, oh, it's going to be the hard point of the Search and Destroy. Just based off the map pools, just based off how the series is going to go. Again, Surge 0-4 right now in Search and Destroy, so you probably expect them to be better in the hard points. Again, Chicago, they've looked much better in those respawns. SD has been a good backbone for Chicago recently. It's not been a good one for Seattle. And so I think if you do see the Surge lose the opening hard point, I think that kind of has something to do with how they'll play in the Search and Destroy. And then kind of it spirals from there. I don't see them winning the Control either. So I think that after this series concludes, it will be a 3-0 for OPTIC, and it will be the Surge getting the unfortunate title of, I guess, the worst team in CDL history, which I hate to say, but it is the case. You lost 11 series in a row. There's nothing that really can be argued there, right? It's the worst stretch of 11 games that we have seen any team in CDL history have, which is it's rough. It's very rough. It's hard to have that, and who knows, maybe we could see Surge make a roster change coming into stage 5 potentially, as that will be their last chance to do so. All right, next day, back-to-back 3-0s. Who loves that? Not me. New York versus the London Royal Ravens. Could this one possibly be different? NYSL, they got through a scary and very scrappy series versus both the Empire and Florida. Both of those were in game 5. Control still seems to be somewhat of a problem for New York, seems to kind of be the bane of them. And I feel like for New York, you have to take a few things into consideration. If they lose hard points, that's where things get scary, right? If they were to lose the opening hard point, I think there's a very good chance that teams can take them to a game 5. And I think that, you know, depending on how things kind of go for New York, you have to consider that last week Hydra was sick. He was under the weather. It was very apparent that was the case. I know that Asim is still playing on Toronto internet, which who knows, whenever he's going to be in the States, it could happen at any day. I really have no idea. Like, sometimes teams figure that stuff out. I'm hoping that he's obviously going to be here for the major, because I don't know how that would make sense, but I'm sure that he will be. But still, just a few things to consider whenever they did go to that game 5 versus Dallas specifically. I know a lot of people were surprised, and that very well could have been a loss if Mac doesn't perform the way that he does, right? If he doesn't drop double 40s in those hard points, that very well could have been an Empire victory. So again, you know what? Maybe New York not looking their strongest coming into this. London, of course, is the underdog. I can see the Ravens taking a Search and Destroy, possibly. Maybe even the Control, depending on how, if we'll see either a Garrison or a checkmate, which I'm sure that we probably will. I think that both teams aren't the biggest fan of Raid, if my mind serves me right. So, you know, if you get a Garrison, for example, maybe that could be great for the Ravens, because they did win a Garrison earlier on in this stage. So with that, I'm going to go NYSL 3-1. I think it's, you could see the Ravens just kind of surprised a little bit in the search and destroys. It also could be a control, but I don't think it's going to be both. I think it's either going to be a search and destroy or a control victory here for the Ravens. I don't think that London are as bad as people think that they are, but they just haven't performed versus the teams that they need to perform against, if that makes sense. So with that, London, unfortunately, will go, 0-4? Is that right if they lose this? No, they have another match. Yeah, they have another match. So they would be 0-4 at this point. In the stage, and it's unfortunate. It really is for this team that just had a lot of momentum coming into stage 4. They make the roster changes, and now they find themselves in a very difficult spot. I didn't adjust this. There we go. Gotta make sure that we're following along here. 3-1 for New York. Very well could be 3-0, to be honest with you. That may be one that I regret going just one differently, but live and learn. You live and learn. All right, moving on. LA Thieves versus the Minnesota Rocker. This is going to be a big game. Probably my favorite within the first 2 days, without a doubt. One of my favorites, honestly, throughout the entirety of these matches, because this is the LA Thieves home series. This is a big one for them. And also, LA Thieves made a huge roster change. They have made a big move. They have brought in Slasher and they have brought in Hook from the bench. Draza and Venom now to the bench, which is pretty crazy. I would say not unexpected, because after they had the loss versus the Legion, I was shocked with that loss. Of course, I know that I got that prediction wrong, but I was pretty surprised that they lost that the way that they did. And it was just it was uncharacteristic. They just have not looked like the team that I think a lot of people expected them to be. And that was the issue that I said that I was terrified about, was, okay, you're going to bring back TJ into this team. What happens if they don't instantly or very soon get back to that same form, or at least look much better than they have? And they just didn't look much better, right? They didn't look much better than they did with Hook. You could argue it's basically kind of the same thing. I don't think they ever won a series with Hook. They've won one series so far throughout this stage, so you could say slightly better, but of course, 1 win versus 0 wins. What do you really take that? But it's just, this is the LA Thieves pivoting for the major, right? They're preparing for the major. We talk about the standings kind of right now. Let me pull those up just to make sure we get exact points correct. A lot of teams are preparing for this, right? The only team that has guaranteed anything is the Atlanta FaZe. They will have a top 8 seed, probably, and undoubtedly the number 1 seed coming in to champs/playoffs. Right now, the LA Thieves are currently sitting in 6th place. They are 40 points behind OPTIC Chicago as of recording this. They are 20 points ahead of Minnesota, who are in the 7th seed, and they are 30 points ahead of Florida, who are in the 8th seed. So, again, do you like the Thieves' chances to be in top 8? You do. But with a loss like this, and with Minnesota kind of on the upward trajectory, with Florida being on the upward trajectory, that's where things start to get a little bit scary, because you never know. Like, we could see one team just perform really well at a stage. Probably, it'd have to be probably Gorillas who do that, and I don't know if we're going to see that happen. But again, you're getting back to LAN. There could be a few alternatives here to think about. And with that, you're probably going to lose this 6th seed if things don't instantly turn around. And like I said, with Minnesota and Florida playing it the way that they are, especially the Mutineers, it very well could be the Thieves that drop into that 8th seed. And we all know what that means, right? You're going to have to face off against the big dogs very, very early when it comes down to playoffs. So this is without a doubt just like a move saying, hey, you know what? We're going to be on LAN. We're going to be on a location. We want to have the veterans. We want to have the players who have been in this atmosphere before. And when you're talking about Slasher, Hook, TJ, and Kenny, that's a terrifying team. Now, from a chemistry perspective, who knows, right? Who knows how this team's going to play? But there's just a lot of questions to ask about the Thieves coming into this series, coming into their home series, coming into really just how the next few weeks look for them, which is, has Hook or Slasher been playing? Like, I'm assuming that they have been playing a decent amount, maybe playing some 8s, but like, are they up to date on, different strategies? Are they aware of what the other Thieves players like to do? Are they aware of, just a number of different things? Because as time goes on, things change. It could be very easy for players who are not playing constantly to know 100%, just minor details that could define a series. So like I said, there's just a lot of questions around, have those players been playing? What do the roles look like for this team, right? Is Kenny and Slasher, is Slasher back to a main AR? Is Slasher going to run the flex? Is Kenny back to a flex role? Is that the right move for them to make? And then also, is this the move that the team wanted, right? Is this the move that Kenny, is this move that Kenny and TJ signed off on? I think it very well at this point is them just being like, hey, like, let's just see what happens. Like, we just can't get anything together. Something's got to change up. I think this is probably more of a management stepping in type of move and saying, hey, listen, we got to get these guys playing. We have Slasher and Hook sitting on our bench. These are some of the greatest players in Call of Duty history. They're not going to be on the bench if this, like, it's kind of like this sense of, hey, we've got some of the greatest players sitting here kind of ready to go if their number is called. This team isn't playing the way that we wanted to. It's not got that same spark to it. Why not bring these guys back in if they're just going to play somewhat similar? Like I said, if you're going to go 1-4 in a stage, I think it's fair to say that you'd rather go 1-4 with the potential, or I say this, you'd rather make that move knowing that things could potentially be better with the players that you have on the bench. So do I understand this move? Of course I do. I'm not surprised by it. I'm not shocked by it. I thought it'd probably be one player coming in rather than two. But I'm excited to see how they play. I know I talked a lot about the Thieves. Of course, they're kind of the big talking point coming into their home series, considering that they did make the massive roster change where half their team is different. Lots of moves for the Thieves camp. How do they react to that? And then on the other side, for Rocker, we'll give them some love, of course. This team's trying to gain some momentum, right? This is a huge week for Rocker. This is a huge match in regards to Group A as well, because things are starting to get kind of more ironed out. Based on how the group looks at this moment, it is in Group A, FaZe currently in the number 1 seed, OPTIC currently in the number 2 seed, and based off predictions, based off odds, they look good to grab the number 1 and number 2 seeds. So who gets 3 and 4, right? Specifically, who gets that 3rd seed? Minnesota coming into this 2-1, Thieves 1-2. So if Thieves were to walk away with this series, then you've got both teams at 2-2 with 1 match left. Thieves have OPTIC and Minnesota have Atlanta. And so that will probably mean that both teams will have an identical record with whoever wins this match defining who gets in. So with that, if you're Thieves, you're hoping for a victory, of course, because most likely who wins this match will be into the top 3. Same thing with Minnesota, right? You get this W, you go 3-1, Thieves instantly go 1-3. And then from there, you should have somewhat smooth sailing. Like, you should not have any problems. Even if you lose your next match, you're going to have 3 dubs. And you'll have win-loss versus Thieves, you know, depending on how they do, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, a big match. Basically, whoever wins this has a very and unbelievably good chance of walking away with that 3rd seed. So, with that being known, I know the Rocker are very focused coming into this week. Again, a team that is just trying to get some security underneath them. They've looked much better in their last few series. They seem to be kind of ironing out some problems now with Major Maniac back in here. And so with that, I honestly, I've kind of left this on the page. I still have a question mark here because I don't know how the map count is going to go, but all I know is that I have Minnesota winning this. I do. I think that it's going to take some time for the Thieves to figure things out. I don't, like I said, this roster change was announced as I'm recording this. So the move was announced the day before what will be their home series. So I'm going to assume that players probably knew about this change maybe a day or two before this announcement. Maybe not. Like, a worst case scenario, players are going to have a day and a half, 2 days of practice, at the most 3 to 4 days of practice. So again, you kind of pick your poison there, however you want to say how well practiced the Thieves are going to be into this match. They're not going to be nearly as well practiced as the Rocker are. And again, that could be a problem for Minnesota based on map pool. Like, there's a lot of ways that you could look at this, because it's like, hey, Minnesota, how do they come into this series? How do they predict this Thieves roster? But I am going to go Rocker here. I just think that Rocker are going to be more focused. I think that they, again, have started to get some consistency. And while I would not be shocked if we do see the Thieves kind of turn things around, right? Hook just kind of comes in, changes the tide. You see Kenny and Slasher and TJ, everybody just kind of gets that vibe back. I think it's possible, but I am going to go probably with the 3-2. I'm just not overly confident in choosing either of these teams, but I am going to go the Rocker here just for the simple fact that they've looked much better lately, and I just trust this team to get better at search and destroy. I trust this team to get better overall at times in hardpoint, and I think that they can be incredibly crafty if they can get kind of a little bit more mode consistency, which I think is exactly what they're working on right now. I know that they are primarily working on those hard points. If that's the case, that is going to be terrifying for other rosters, because if this team can be good at not only hard point, but also kind of coincide that with control, while also having a great search and destroy team, that is a great blueprint. So I think with that in mind, I will go Rocker here. You know what? I'll change it to 3-1. I'm going to change it to 3-1. Yeah. I'm just going to sit there with that. I'm going to go 3-1 for Minnesota Rocker. That is a hard prediction, and I would not be surprised if this is a 3-0 for Rocker. I would be probably more surprised if it's a 3-0 for Thieves. But again, you just, like I said, with the roster that the Thieves are going to have, like on paper, that is a terrifying team. So moving on to Saturday, we're starting the day off with LAG versus London. Both teams most likely in search of getting their first win. According to my predictions, both teams coming into this will be 0-4. This is simply just to find out who is going to get the 5th versus the 6th seed. Now, for my history in pick'ems, these are some of the hardest predictions to make. And these are ones that I would circle. You know, if you want to try to get as many points as possible, if you're, in a really good spot to try and beat your friends, or to, beat a certain leaderboard, maybe the CDL leaderboard, depending on it. These are the matches that you really want to focus on and probably do, I don't want to say the most research into, but just don't just be like, okay, 5 versus 6. Okay. I think that LAG look better. Like, I would probably go more in depth with these, just because, again, both teams have nothing to lose. At the same time, not a ton to gain. You get a 1 series advantage, which is big, but also at the same time, both the starting and losers. Both teams, like I said, are 0-4. They have yet to win a match. Who has more upside? So again, I think these, like I said, these are some of the most hardest ones to predict. I feel like I don't know where the Ravens are right now, and I don't think that the Ravens know where they are either. I think with LAG, at the very least, this team knows who they are. They know where they sit. And I think this is going to be a team who's hungry for a W, because this has been a roster who's been together for a little while now with Sheen in the lineup. And I think that they know kind of where they stand. They know what kind of team they're. I feel like Gorillas know their identity versus a team like Ravens, who are still trying to figure it out. At times they can be explosive. At times they could just fall flat. And that is, I think, what kind of worries me the most about this London team, is just for the simple fact that I just don't really know where to place them. I don't know really where to say their strengths can most likely come from. And so with that, I'm going to give LAG the edge. Currently, I'm going to set this at a 3-2. Now, depending on how London look versus New York, depending on how LAG look versus Toronto, which again, I have LAG losing in a 3-0. I have London getting a map versus New York, which that very well could be 3-0 as well. We'll probably define how I make this, but for now, I think this will be a closer one. It very well could be a 3-1 for LAG, but I just don't see London putting together the pieces when they have to. I think this will be kind of more of a veteran type series to kind of put away the performance so far this stage, and just be like, all right, let's just see what we can do, right? Let's just try to get a victory here. Let's just try to, blind out the noise, blind out the struggles that we've had. And I think this will be kind of more of a veteran type of series for LAG, as they've been in the situation a few times now. So I will give the Gorillas the edge in this particular one. But again, another prediction that I do not feel ultimately comfortable with. I think Thieves versus Rocker, I feel more comfortable, and of course Rocker to take it, but this one I think has the ability to go either way. So with that, we'll go and move on to another big game, Atlanta versus Minnesota. Atlanta is currently on pace to actually tie the Ultras Stage 3 group record, I think, so far throughout this season, which is 15-1. Right now, Atlanta are 4-0 in their matches and are 12-1 in maps. So what they got, the 3-0 versus the Surge, they got the 3-0 versus the Thieves. Let me actually see here. I want to make sure I get this right for Atlanta. Let me just double check. So what, they started off, okay, it was the 3-1 versus Paris. That's right. And then from there, Atlanta have rolled. They 3-0 versus Optic. They 3-0 Surge. They 3-0 Thieves. So they are on a, Paris stole the search and destroy. So that would be 11 map winning streak. Is that right? That sounds about right. So an 11 map winning streak coming into this particular series. And of course, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. I have Atlanta winning this. It's just a matter of how many maps do you give to Minnesota, if any at all. I think that Rocker, I think they're gonna give this their best effort. I really do. I think this is a team that, again, with Major Maniac, I just like that move. I like that move from an internal perspective. And I think once this team gets to LAN, I really like Rocker's upside as well. But the thing is that their respawns just have to be on point. Now, will they be as on point as many expect them to? Or I'll say this, are they going to be as on point as people expect, or are they going to rise above the occasion? I think if they could become a good hardpoint team, like I said, they will be a team that succeeds for the rest of the year, because SMD will come along in time. It's just a matter of, can those respawns be there? Again, I talk specifically about the hardpoints, and whenever we've heard Rocker players be interviewed, it's like, hey, we're working on hardpoint. We're working on hardpoint. We're working on hardpoint. We're working on hardpoint. So with that in mind, I really did want to go 3-2 here. Like I really do want to give Minnesota something, but I don't know if I can give them more than one map. I really don't. Again, we talk about the opening hardpoint. You're going to favor FaZe, but maybe they come out a little bit slow. Like they know they're going to have, you know, the #1 seed coming into this. There's no doubt about it. But it is kind of hard, right? Because where does Minnesota kind of get the area of attack? Is it going to be in the search? It's going to have to be in the hard point of the search and destroy, because I just feel like FaZe are such a good control team that's going to counter Rocker. I'm going to go with 3-1. I think they attack him in one of the first 3 maps, for sure. I think they're either going to take a hard point, a search and destroy, or a control. I really cannot tell you which one, and I don't really feel necessarily confident in either one. It's kind of like I give them a 33% chance to win one of these maps, and it's like, okay, well, 33% chance to win map 1. No. Map 2, no. Control, well, hey, that's 1 in 3. Which one are they gonna get? And so that's kind of where I'm sitting with this. Again, I want to give Rocker a lot of props because I am impressed with them lately, but it's just hard. It's just hard for a team like FaZe who are just rolling the way that they are. So, final match of Saturday. It is a Game Fuel marquee match, which means double points. What did we do last week? We got what? We got +6 in the OPTIC versus Paris. We got +4 off by 1 map. That's unfortunate. Those double points, tell you what, that is defining. Like, so the double points, the Game Fuel double point matches are literally they define essentially how well you play overall. And if you get these wrong, that really hurts. So, considering the ones that we have, specifically Dallas versus Florida, I will say this right now. This is going to be one of my, if not my favorite match to watch, given how the Empire looked versus New York, right? They go to game 5, round 10. They win the search, destroy, and the control. Vivid has his best series at a 1.04. Shotzzy plays even better, but the ARs did not, right? Crim6 and LA, they go -46 combined versus Mac, essentially, versus Mac and Clay, of course. But Mac, just with the performance that he had, just outslayed them. They cannot hold on. They cannot handle the hard points, especially, of course, search and destroy. They couldn't get it done in that game 5. But like I said, how much do you take from an Empire performance? Again, like I said, for Crim6 and LA to perform the way that they did, like, hey, that's just an off series for them. Imagine if they're performing well, and then you have Vivid still playing a much better. So I think that there are a lot of positives to take away for Empire, despite New York maybe not being at full steam, considering that Hydra was sick, considering that, again, ASIM is playing in Toronto, which is not great internet, but still. So I think you do take some positives away. I wouldn't say that, like, Dallas are essentially, one step, like, just right behind New York. But I would say that at times they can possibly be there. And then on the Florida side, they just continue to look good, right? The Mutineers, they beat LAG 3-1. They lose a game 5 to New York. So both these teams have lost a game 5 to NYSL. And I would say just so far for Mutineers, like, Skies just looks to be hitting form. This is without a doubt his best stage so far. The team just looks more relaxed. They look more prepared. Their communication looks much better. And they just can kind of strike you in any mode. Like, it's kind of random. Like, at times they'll hit you in the hard points. At times they'll hit you in the search and destroy. Sometimes control is great. Sometimes control is not. And I just like Florida to take the opening hard point. Why? Because they've done it so far in every single series. They have taken the hard point, the opening hard point, in all 4 of their series, no matter who they have faced off against. Whether it's been whatever team you want to call it out, specifically New York, which is probably the most impressive one, and then Ultra sits there too. Florida have taken that opening hard point, so that is big for them. If they can kind of continue with that, that is going to be great. And then what? Like I said, we're really going to get into the nitty gritty of this, because it is a Game Fuel marquee match, and God, considering this is just an overall phenomenal game to watch. So I give Florida the 1-0 advantage. And then we come into the search and destroy. Dallas so far 4-2 in stage 4. Florida also 4-2 so far in stage 4 in the search and destroys. Do you give Florida the edge considering Dallas Empire struggled there? Like Dallas did take the control versus New York in the last match. But Vivid did go off at 32-19. Pretty sure that was a Garrison. And then you also talk about like the head-to-heads as well, like as we kind of dive in from maps to players specifically, role department specifically, like, you know, who do you like more on the SMG side of things? Like maybe you like the Dallas Empire SMGs. If Shotzi's performing the way that he is lately, alongside a more consistent Vivid, maybe they can set the tone. But then we talk about just the way that at times Neptune can go off, how important that he can be on the map. And then also the ARs, right? The ARs, like I said, they go negative, what was it, 48? Negative 48 versus negative 46 versus NYSL. They can't have that performance, especially versus an AR duo like Skies and Awakening. And so with that in mind, I think that the S&D and the control are going to be up in the air. I think you could, like, it's going to be very difficult to predict how those go. But I'm not willing to bet that Dallas can win both, honestly, for the simple fact of just the ARs. Like I think that Vivid will be better. I don't know if we're going to see that same Vivid necessarily to the point where he is just at like a, you know, over a 1 KD. He'll have those series, and he had those series versus with Gorillas. I'm still interested to see if that consistency can still be there. And then with the ARs just not having a great last few performances, I bet on Florida right now. I think that they take the hard point. I think they probably take either the search and destroy or the control. And then I guess they take the game 4 hard point as well. And it very well could go down to a game 5. It would not shock me if it does. But I'm going to give Florida the edge here to walk away with this one. Now, again, I will say, I very well may change this. I'm already saying it right now. I very well may change this to a game 5. But I don't think I'm going to change it from Florida winning. I think I'm going to stay with Florida, but I'm just saying this right now. I may change this to a 3-2, just depending on a number of different factors. Like, you know, sometimes my thoughts just change coming into it. If I maybe look more in detail at the maps versus map vetoes, I may change it as well. But for now, I'm going to reside with the 3-1. We'll see if that can stick in, and see if Florida can go to what would be 4-1 to finish out Group B. So best of luck to them in that endeavor. Okay, let's go and move on to our final day. Paris versus Surge, very similar to the match that kicks off Saturday, a match that basically decides who gets the 5th versus 6th seed. Both teams 0-4. And again, this is hard to call because there's just not a whole lot of positive notes to take from either of these teams. And that just means like you're going to see one team walk away with the game. You're like, wow, like they actually want to hardpoint this stage, or they want to search and destroy this stage. And it's like, well, they did it in the match that was for the 5th versus 6th seed. So, you know, what do you really take from that? But I really do kind of mark this down, this particular series, to just who steals the game 1. Like, who comes out with more life? Who comes into this series just thinking like, hey, you know what? Who cares? Who cares that, you know, we're in this situation? Who cares that we're kind of in this spot? You know, well, actually, no, I apologize. I got this wrong. I just thought about this. Paris are not 0-4. Paris will be 1-4 coming into this. So I apologize. Whoever does win this series will take the 5th seed, but Paris right now technically have that already. So Paris, with this win, could actually get the 4th seed. So I apologize. May have to go through the editing process to take care of that. But my apologies. Both teams are not 0-4. Paris are 1-3. Seattle would be 0-4. And again, if Paris do win this, I believe that they would in fact get the 4th seed. So this is a big game for Legion. Not so much of a big series for Seattle. I actually didn't have that right in my notes. I just for some reason decided to not look at my notes, which is very cool. But I think that Surge are just a team that can easily get tilted. And for that reason, I'm going to go Paris here. I think Paris take the opening hard point. The search and destroy has looked better. And then when you get to that control, it's just like, Seattle, please. Seattle, just get a control, get a W, try to change things up. And again, I think the opening hard point could be good for Seattle as well. Seattle at times can be very good in the opening hard points, but I think this will be a close hard point that comes down to the wire. But I just like Paris's chance at being more explosive out of the gates. So with that, I'm going to give Legion the dub. I think they win this one 3-1. And so I go for that just for the simple fact that Legion, I think, can be more explosive. And with this loss, Seattle would go 0-5, and they would take over the I think they would be in this particular situation 0-12. Yes, they would be 0-12 in their last 12 matches. We'll leave it there. Next match, New York versus Ultra. How about this one? Let's go and change it up a little bit. This is going to be a great match to watch. One of my favorites, without a doubt, at the LA Thieves home series. This is going to be a fun one. Again, Toronto off of the win versus LAG. New York off the win versus London. New York would be 4-0. Toronto in this situation would be 3-1. Again, I don't know when ASIM gets to the States, because I think I'd like New York a lot more if he'll be there by then. But I look in this particular series most at the search and destroys. I think a majority of the time with separate hard points, that's probably going to favor New York. I like the control for Ultra, of course. But we talk about X factors, like I really am looking at Mac. I'm looking at Mac. I'm looking at explosiveness from different players. I think if you could see a better Hydra and a more focused team, I think New York walk away with this. But I think that Ultra will make this a great series, without a doubt. I think this one does go down to the wire. I think this one goes down to a game 5. And I think this one honestly could go either way. Would not shock me if Toronto wins this. It would not surprise me, of course, if New York wins this. And I will be going with New York to close this one out. At times, I rely way too heavily on this New York team, but I just think that the issues that they've had are kind of more minor ones. I don't think they're as severe as people think, but just with how locked down that they have been in hardpoint throughout a majority of their series, they're a hard team to crack. Whenever, like I said, you can just rely on a team to be good in the respawns. Depending on the search and destroy map, they can take you down. And so with that in mind, I'll say this. I think it will be more difficult for New York to win a hard point than it will be I said that wrong. I think it will be more difficult for Toronto to take a hard point than it will be for New York to take a search and destroy. So with that in mind, that's the way that I'm going with this one. It just depends on can somebody steal an opposite map, and then ultimately who of course walks away with the search and destroy. Specifically what I think will be that game 5-1, and I'm going to go with New York for that. So with that in mind, we've got our last match before LAN. Chicago versus LA. OPTIC versus Thieves. A great match, and one that I'm super excited about. But again, Chicago coming into this are 3-1. LAT are 1-3. And with the loss that they have versus Minnesota, I do not believe that Thieves will have a chance to get into the top 3. It's hard to guess where this one goes, depending on map specifically, because I think that whenever you have Slasher and Hookback, I think that they're going to feel the impacts of how important this game is, because of course you're going to lose to Rocker, at least in my predictions. So by having that, the first series that they have versus Minnesota is going to take some time. I think ultimately it just comes down to Minnesota wanting it more in that moment. But you got Slasher versus OPTIC. You have Hook versus OPTIC. I think this team is going to, despite not necessarily having a chance to get top 3, I think this will still be a team who's just motivated. I think there's going to be a team that's kind of hungry to try and get something going. So with that, I'm going to give them at least one map. I think it's hard to guess exactly where the Thieves are going to strike. It's hard to guess where they're going to sit. Again, what's up with the role department, my prediction very well could totally change depending on how Thieves play versus Rocker. Let's say that they take it versus Rocker. Maybe I give them not just one, maybe I give them 2 maps. But just with where OPTIC are right now, I think they're too good in respawns. I think that Search and Destroy, of course, is one they can rely on as well. But I think it just kind of depends on what Hook we get, what Slasher we get, how this team can quickly rebound at their own home series with the spotlight, without a doubt, on them. And so with that, I'm going to keep it at 1 map for now. I am heavily looking at Thieves because I think that they have the highest chance to really screw up what would be maybe a lot of people's predictions for Group A. I'm sure a lot of people are going to go with Thieves probably to win this match. At least I would assume the general fan base would go with Thieves to take this versus Minnesota. And if they can do that, that changes up the whole dynamic, because if that's the case, Minnesota then falls to 2-2. LA Thieves are 2-2. They're probably good to get that 3rd seed. And so if that's the case, Thieves versus OPTIC very well could decide who gets the 2nd seed. So we could see the Thieves go from 4th to 2nd at their own home series with this debut of Slasher and Hook, which is going to be crazy. So I'm going to keep it at 3-1. I hate going 3-1 for a lot of these, and I only have 2 3-0s, but I think the matches are going to get more competitive. I think especially with these two in particular, these maybe could be, placeholders for 3-0s, but I think when we talk about the schedule, at times you have the rosters who don't perform as good facing off against some of the top dogs early, and then kind of facing off against more lesser teams as time goes on. So with that, these two matches, I think would probably be more of a placeholder for 3-0s if we were in a different kind of week of this stage. So with that, I feel pretty good about these. We have a few game 5s, but ultimately 3-0s, 3-1s. But a lot of these have the potential to change. Like I said, I'm looking at Thieves versus Rocker, just to kind of define, the matches that I'm looking at most, ones that I may change by a map or two. I'm looking at Thieves versus Rocker. I'm honestly looking at LAG versus Ravens, just because both these teams will play coming into this one, or have played a match. I'm not really looking at this one too heavily. I'm definitely looking at Dallas versus Florida to possibly make an adjustment. And then from there, probably OPTIC versus Thieves. Like I'm probably looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. And like I said, both of these include the Thieves, which I think are without a doubt the most questioned team outside of, I guess, Mutineers coming into this week. But I think Thieves, without a doubt, they're the talking point, they're the storyline. They got 2 massive games here to decide whether or not they can get top 3, and they're gonna have to win versus Rocker in order to get that done. And who knows, like I said, the ceiling for them potentially could be as high as the 2nd seed, which would be incredible for them if they were able to accomplish that. So again, folks, I hope you enjoyed this edition of LandO's Lock-ins. I just have a blast talking some COD, going over predictions, going over my CDL pick'ems. If you guys have any thoughts, specific matches that you were interested to watch, specific matches that you think maybe, hey, Landon, you might have got this one wrong. Maybe you should have gone this direction, or I think this series could be one to look out for out of the 4 that I mentioned specifically. Feel free to let me know down in the comments. If you have made it to this point in the video, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Again, I absolutely love doing LandO's Lock-ins and trying to improve some of the aesthetics, if you will, worked for a few hours on the graphics, just trying to make things a little bit more fun, a little bit more vibrant. At some point, I'd love to get some guests on as well. I'd love to get your guys' opinions on these matches, and maybe get some videos like on the screen of you guys just being like, hey, what do you think about this match? Or, maybe this is my prediction for this match. Do you agree with that? Just little things like that, just to make this more fun. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope that you did, in fact, enjoy it. If you did, feel free to leave this video a like, subscribe for future videos. And with that, I hope that you have a great time watching the LA Thieves home series as we put in and save our predictions. I will see you all in the next episode.